Get some analysis on this now from Susan Sullivan, who's a professor of law and politics at Temple University in London. And appreciate you staying up to this late hour where you are. Susan, you'll have watched the address. First of all, anything jump out, stand out in your mind from what President Biden had to say?
Well, there were certain punchy things that stood out. You can always rely on Joe Biden to get a little folksy, and there were several times when he cracked some jokes. Always dangerous because you don't know if that's going to go over. But I think, I think he had certain things he needed to do, because this was the State of the Union that you are required to give. It's actually in the U.S. Constitution from 250 years ago. So you're required to give that. But when it's in the year that November, the Americans will go to the polls, it's pretty much launching your campaign as well. So, he needed to come out fighting. He needed to be excited. He needed to seem strong and in control. There's a lot of discussion here, especially among younger voters, that, that he's too old, that he's too frail. So he needed to come out strong, and he needed to come out coherent. And he was. And he also needed to, without naming his opponent, which he didn't do, he referred to him as his predecessor, he needed to create this image of his predecessor as his worst self. Remind people, how he could be obnoxious, how he could be despicable. It was important for him to strengthen himself, but also try and weaken his opponent. And, he really did, as Andy said, he really did come out fighting. I mean, right off the bat, he was talking about Putin and about Ukraine. We will not bow down. I will not bow down. These are strong fighting words, very strong. Segued then right to the January 6th insurrection that, of course, the former president is being prosecuted in Washington, D.C., in one of the 4 cases against him.
So, Susan, just to clarify, with what you said, he started on Ukraine and talking about Putin and the link to Donald Trump, accused him of bowing down to Putin, then talking about the insurrection. I mean, was this basically right from the get-go, this was an attack on Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think so. I thought it was actually a really clever way to sort of use this violence in Ukraine and then compare it to the violence here, because both of which can be characterized as an attack on democracy. With Putin's invasion of Ukraine and what we saw with the January 6th insurrection. So segueing from one foreign threat to democracy to this domestic threat. And I think he said, you can't love your country only when you win. So he was looking at, foreign international violence as well as the political violence that he is ascribing to the former president. So, yeah, I do think, I thought it was a very well structured I thought the speech was very well structured, but I thought the dynamic there was very effective.
And you spoke about this being kind of, a campaigning speech, which the theme seemed to be cleverly woven in there. Did we see the president, making quite a lot of, I won't say promises, but pledges of things he would like to do, but actually it might be almost impossible for him to deliver? For example, he proposed a ban on assault weapons. He also said that he will do his best to restore abortion rights. Now, things that would be almost impossible or very difficult, certainly when it comes to gun laws, for him to deliver, but it certainly played well to the audience, certainly his own party supporters.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There are plenty of things that are couched as something that he will do, which he may not have a great opportunity to do in all likelihood. He actually covered, I think, every topic. He checked every box, from immigration to the economy to jobs, education, health, and so forth. Certainly, the call to ban assault weapons is one that is a recurring call with this American gun culture that is so unusual, and it's ingrained in this, in the American psyche. The ban on assault weapons, highly unlikely to go through. The the promises he was making about federal legislation to restore a woman's right to choose whether or not to terminate a pregnancy, that's a possibility. That's something I think that he can work on. I think there are legal avenues there, legal possibilities. What I do think was striking when he talked about the Middle East, again, as Andy mentioned, he talked about the horror of October 7th, and he talked about what the Israeli people were suffering. But he really came on stronger than I've heard him come on in terms of being concerned about what was going on in Gaza, which he described as gut-wrenching and heartbreaking. And he was quite emphatic that, as he said, the only real solution is a two-state solution. There is no other path. And that's pretty emphatic. That's something that we know Netanyahu is not accepting, is not embracing. So, we've heard sometimes that the United States can be unconditionally supportive of Israel. My sense is that the pendulum is swinging somewhat. There's a tremendous amount of discussion and outrage with the number of dead Palestinians in Gaza. Tremendous concern about that tragedy.
Susan, I really do apologise for interrupting you. I'm afraid time has got the better of us. We're going to have to wrap it up there. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you again at some later point. Susan Sullivan, Professor of Law and Politics at Temple University in London.